Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is the Piracy Show. Now, we're going to be using the uncut version of the combat footage in the background that I used for ship updates, and this relates to the last episode of ship updates because there was a comment that actually just went up not too long ago by a viewer named Novala7 who very astutely observed that the F8 Lightning is kind of set up to be a dominating fighter. And when you look at the F8 Lightning, the stats that we have so far, the F8 Lightning is incredibly impressive. If you look at it right now, currently you have 2 size 4s, and then you have 6, potentially 6, size 3 guns. Now, I would assume that the size 3s are gimbaled and the size 4s are fixed, but that does mean that chances are you can make those 2 size 4s into a further 2 size 3s, giving you potentially 8 size 3 gimbaled guns. That's pretty ferocious. Now, remember that 2 of the size 3s are in a remote turret. So how that's all going to work out, hopefully, players can control those, but are they facing in a different direction? I'm not entirely sure. But that is an absolutely ferocious amount of firepower, and that is a very, that could be a very dominant fighter in the Star Citizen universe. Now, it doesn't have the interior that the Vanguard does, but, that firepower, when compared to the Vanguard firepower, oddly enough, the F8 Lightning arriving into the game could be the catalyst for change in the Vanguard and getting the final changes to the Vanguard that it really needs to truly succeed. It's acceptable for now, but certainly when you look at it compared to the F8 Lightning, it's a whole other different situation. And I don't think that the interior and the added weapon and armor capacity quite covers it. It makes the Vanguard look less like a fighter than the actual fighter, which is the F8 Lightning. But when I'm looking at this brings to mind a kind of a blood of the enemy situation, which probably most of you will not understand, but some of you are just going to be like, oh God, why did you have to mention that? For those of you that don't know, blood of the enemy was it was an Azerite power that you could get in World of Warcraft, and it was absolutely critical if you wanted to do dungeons. What it did is it threw out a giant AoE burst all around you. I think it had like a very short, 2-minute cooldown that it would hit for a truckload of damage, but then it would debuff everything that it hit, and this was uncapped AoE. It would debuff everything, so that they were, I think it was 50% more likely to suffer from a critical strike. So everything that you hit, you basically had a 50% plus crit chance on them. So it was absolutely critical in dungeon running and in boss fights where there were large packs of mobs that you had to deal with. And so players had to chase after this. They felt compelled to go out and get this, because it was just so ridiculously powerful. Now, what kind of pissed off a lot of players is that it was gated behind PvP, and WoW is mostly a PvE game. And so what emerged was that you could unlock the power through a very basic amount of doing PvP. You just had to win one battleground, one epic battleground, and I think one PvP island, and you basically unlocked the power. But after that, you had to grind up 50,000 honor, I think it was, to get it to its top potency. And so many players felt compelled to do that, and they were, and there was a lot of complaining about that, certainly in a mostly PvE game world. Now, how does that compare and how does that relate to Star Citizen? Oddly enough, we might see a situation similar to that develop, where a lot of players are going to be kind of feeling compelled. For those of you who are the later backers who don't have Squadron 42 included in your game packages, you may feel compelled to go out and get Squadron 42 to do the campaign, to get to the point where you unlock the F8 Lightning so that you can buy it in the persistent universe. Because remember, unless I think it's, what is the threshold? $10,000, I believe, is the threshold that awards you F8 Lightning from CIG. unless you're willing to spend that amount of money on virtual starships and Star Citizen, that's the only way that you can unlock the F8 Lightning. And so most of us are, going to be going and chasing after that ship. And that could create a really kind of a funny situation where a lot of the later sales for Squadron 42 might be just people who intend to play in the persistent universe but feel compelled to chase after the F8 Lightning, and then are going out and buying Squadron 42 just so that they can unlock the ship. Because even if you take away that remote turret, that's still a ferocious amount of firepower. And there may be a lot of players who want to go out there and take a heavy fighter that has that kind of firepower. Because as you can see, firepower can be a hell of a game changer. Even when you're in a bigger and slower ship. I mean, the ability to get that big first hit in could be the deciding factor, especially against lighter and smaller ships. We could get to a point where a lot of Squadron 42's later sales are actually driven solely by pursuit of the F8 Lightning. And this actually does raise the specter, the possibility, the argument of pay to win. Now, pay to win has been used very, very loosely as a criticism of Star Citizen in the past. And I've often said that it's not really a pay to win situation, it's a pay to progress situation. I mean, it's the same as like if you were playing any other MMO. Oftentimes companies will offer you the chance, like, oh, you can spend this amount of money and you can just get your character up to max level, and then you can start doing the end game with your friends. You're paying to progress, and it's the same thing with Star Citizen. Just because you get your hands on a reclaimer or a mole or something like that puts you more or less in an end game ship it would be the Orion for mining, but you know what I mean. It would put you in a much more powerful ship. It doesn't automatically mean that you're just going to win the game. There's a lot you have to do. There's a lot of skill that you have to kind of pick up along the way. So it's not really a pay-to-win situation. It's not like my buying an F8 Lightning means that there's just one button in the cockpit that says kill everything, that I want dead now. There's still going to be a lot of skill and a lot of gameplay involved in actually making that thing work, a lot of experience. And that's always been Star Citizen's kind of exception to that rule. But oddly enough, with the F8 Lightning, you could actually start to actually make a legitimate pay-to-win argument, because that is a wickedly dominant fighter. That is looking to be a crazy good fighter, but at the same time, in order to access it, you have two choices. You can either spend, like $10,000 on virtual starships, which some people have, and you get awarded one on your account, or you play through the Squadron 42 campaign to the point where you unlock the F8 Lightning, and then you have access to this fighter in the persistent universe. When we were talking about, using in-game combat to unlock things, this is kind of a weird situation where it's in-game combat in Squadron 42 that unlocks something in, Star Citizen. Now, for the older backers like myself, we have Squadron 42 already applied to our accounts. It came as a package deal with our original game packages in Star Citizen. My original game package is built around my Caterpillar, which is often one of the reasons why when people say, are you ever going to get rid of your Caterpillar? And I say, no. I might upgrade it to something, but I'm never, getting rid of that game package, because then I lose access to all the things that I got from, those original backer milestones, and I get rid of my Squadron 42 game package, which, would be disastrous. Perfect timing. When I look at the F8 Lightning, I definitely see a ship that I want to own. I definitely see a ship that I would like to pursue. And I really struggle to find a situation where I think that would actually be a bad ship to have, especially if you were into fighter combat. if you kind of graduate to the point where you want to go and visit multiple planets within a solar system at the very least and engage in combat there, and you want a much more resilient, much more robust platform, you're going to want that F8 Lightning. They're really, when we talk about medium-sized ships being kind of the thinned out area of Star Citizen and fighters being a little bit overdeveloped, especially the light and the mediums, the F8 Lightning, really, in terms of heavy fighters, it looks like CIG is setting that thing up to be kind of like the only game in town, and the only way to get it is to go out and buy Squadron 42 if you don't have it already, and then play through the campaign to unlock it in the persistent universe. When I read that comment from Novalis, I just went like, that's actually a very good point. I better make sure that on the one hand, I earmark a certain amount of funds and kind of set those aside as basically the, once I unlock it, purchase the F8 Lightning. Seeing that and being, kind of the MMO player that I am, certainly I went out and I ground out the 50,000 honor for Blood of the Enemy. I'll play the Squadron 42 single player campaign to the point that I have to unlock the F8 Lightning. If I have to play it all the way through to the end, fine, I'll do it just to unlock that ship. It's not going to be what I ideally would like to do, but unless there is another ship that kind of comes in and rivals the F8 Lightning in power, that is just obtainable, through the store, or unless the Vanguard, gets the fixes that it needs, the total package of fixes that it needs, and not just some of them, I really don't see a situation where I wouldn't own the F8 Lightning in the future. It is that strong of a fighter. Now, as I said, this could be the catalyst for change in the Vanguard. The arrival of the F8 Lightning might force CIG's hand to reassess the Vanguard and finally, they certainly, were excited to go in and fix the cosmetic elements, but the core elements that what make that ship a fighter didn't really get the attention that they deserved. But at the same time, I think this also kind of really highlights the fact that the heavy fighter lineup in Star Citizen is sparse, to say the least. And there should be something else out there that kind of rivals the F8 Lightning. When we talk about it in lore, we always say, like all these companies bid on this, contract from the UEE or, the Navy. Let's see some of the other failed bids go out into the civilian market. When we're talking about concept ships and we're kind of looking towards the future, I would certainly not be adverse to there being another heavy fighter in those concept ships, but at the same time, I almost wonder if CIG isn't saying, this is going to be the hook that drives a lot of future Star Citizen or Squadron 42 package sales, is people are going to start looking at this thing and they're going to start seeing how much it kind of pumps in the persistent universe, and they'll be like, oh man, I got to get that. How do you get it? Well, buy $10,000 worth of ships or play through Squadron 42. Well, I'm going to play through Squadron 42. And that, that could be a little bit of a nasty marketing hook that they have for Squadron 42. It's like, you want the good fighter, you're going to have to play through the single player campaign. It's going to be a bit of a weird situation. I kind of want to see more heavy fighters actually come into the game that rival this just through the store, just to see what other manufacturers would do and just to have a little bit of variety out there, because the other danger, if this is the only game in town, is that everyone's going to be flying it, and then the universe gets a little too samey. It's just like everyone plays, this class or that class in other games. It can be a little bit too much. So I hope that there is a rival to the F8 Lightning that is on the docket to be introduced. But at the same time, given this person's observation and my own personal experience from other video games, that kind of made the F8 Lightning a bit of a necessity, which I'm not entirely sure is a good thing.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.